Hello friends, I am Dr. Ashok Kumar Madhav here once again. In this session, we will be discussing about introduction or introducing agribusiness. In this session, the objectives of this session is, at the end of this session, you should be able to define agricultural business, identify the characteristics of agribusiness, outline the history of agribusiness, analyze the challenges faced by agribusiness in India, cite the scope of agribusiness. Dear friends, we have discussed about the fundamental aspects of agriculture in the previous sessions. In this session, I am introducing you to agribusiness and its basic concepts. Let's begin by trying to know agricultural business as such, or we call it as agribusiness. As a prelude, we can see that as we hear the term agriculture, we think of the plowed field, seeds being planted, crops harvested, along with milking cows or feeding livestock. Presently, agriculture has taken a different scope overall. It had evolved from the concept of feeding the hungry to a big business. Agriculture had extended itself to something known as agribusiness. With times, the agriculture process has become a vast and complex system. This also reaches far beyond the farm to include all those who are involved in bringing food and fiber to consumers. It also involves allied processes that help in delivering the end product to the consumers. Agribusiness is a process that not only includes a farmer but also those who provide the inputs, for example, seeds, chemicals, etc. Process the output, for example, milk, grain, etc. Manufacture the food products, for example, bread, breakfast cereals, etc. And transport and sell the food products to consumers, for example, restaurants and supermarkets, etc. Agribusiness system has undergone a rapid change due to the rise of new industries, and as the traditional farming operations have grown more specialized. This transformation did not happen suddenly, but slowly in response to a variety of forces. Initially, agriculture being the major venture, it was easy to become a farmer. Productivity was low. Average farmer produced enough food to feed fewer people. As a consequence, most farmers were only self-sufficient. They produced most of the inputs they needed for production, such as seed, draft animals, feed and simple farm equipment. As time progressed, there was a need for farmers to exchange the products that they produce. Thus, an association of allied business became essential with agriculture. Now, we will see some milestones in agricultural business. Agriculture business as a concept was born in Harvard University in 1957 with the publication of a book, A Concept of Agribusiness, written by John David and A. Goldberg. It was introduced in the Philippines in early 1966 when the University of the Philippines offered an agribusiness management program at the undergraduate level, that is ABM. In 1969, the first advanced agricultural business management seminar was held in Manila. Agribusiness has been defined in various forms by various entrepreneurs. Some of the prominent definitions are as follows. According to John David and Goldberg, agribusiness is the sum total of all operations involved in the manufacture and distribution of farm supplies. Production activities on the farm, storage, processing and distribution of farm commodities, and items made from them. According to another definition, Agribusiness is defined as the sum total of all business activities involved in the production, processing, and distribution of agricultural products to the consumers. Agribusiness involves crop production, farming and contract farming, seed supply, agrochemicals, farm machinery, distribution, processing, marketing, and retail sales. Within the agriculture industry, agribusiness is used simply as a promenadino of agriculture and business, referring to the range of activities and disciplines encompassed by the modern food production. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, that is FAO for example, operates a section devoted to the development of agribusiness. It seeks to promote the growth of food industry in developing countries. In the context of academia, each individual element of agriculture, production and distribution may be described as an agribusiness. However, the term agribusiness most often emphasizes the interdependence of these various sectors within the production chain. Among critics of large scale industrialized, vertically integrated food production, the term agribusiness is used negatively, synonymous with the corporate farming. As such, it is often contrasted with smaller family owned farms. Now, there are some myths about it. Some myths about agribusiness are: Myth 1: agribusiness involves agricultural production through farming. Media has extensively used the term agri-business as a result of efforts of the government to develop the agricultural sector. This resulted in a stronger public interest in agribusiness. In spite of these efforts, certain reports and public opinion tend to equate agribusiness with farming. Now, myth 2: agribusiness is big business. As agribusiness originated from the West, it has always been associated with the big business. Some sectors have been accusing agribusiness of being anti farmers. This concluded that agribusiness is inappropriate in developing countries where small farmers predominate. The third myth is agribusiness is purely a private sector undertaking. While agribusiness is primarily a private sector undertaking, there is a misperception that it is limited to profit seeking organizations. This resulted that some people could not seem to appreciate the utility of the agribusiness concept in rural development projects implemented by the public sector for the welfare of rural communities. Some prominent characteristics of agribusiness are: there are variations in the kinds of business in agribusiness sector. These may include basic producers, wholesalers, transporters, processors, manufacturers, storage firms, packagers, food chains, retailers, etc. Large number of agribusinesses is involved. Large numbers of different businesses are evolved to handle the routes from the producer to retailers. Agribusinesses are built around several millions of farm producers. No other businesses is built principally around the basic producer of its raw product as agriculture business, and these businesses deal with farmers directly or indirectly. Agribusiness vary in their right from one person or one family organization to large giants like Reliance Fresh, PepsiCo, Amul and Heritage, etc. Agribusiness firms are small and compete in a relatively free market in which there are many sellers and many buyers. Agribusiness firms do not allow monopoly like enterprises in the industry. Product differentiation is common because of the brand and composition of the products. Agribusiness are traditional oriented and are more conservative when compared to other businesses as such. Most of the agribusiness are community oriented in the sense most of them are located in small towns and rural areas where relationships are important and associations are long term. Agribusinesses are highly seasonal in their nature due to the fact that they depend on farm production. These businesses are affected by vigorous, that is, unpredictable change of nature. Natural calamities like drought, floods, insects, and pests and diseases are constant threats to agribusiness. Agribusiness is vertically structured. The government programs and policies have direct impact on agribusiness. Each of these features of the agribusiness world require the agribusiness managers use the principles of management in a very special way. Therefore, agribusiness is very unique and requires unique abilities and skills to manage it. Agribusiness includes not only the productive piece of land, but also the people and the firms that provide the inputs, that is, seed, chemicals, credit, etc. Process the output, for example, milk, grain, meat, etc. Manufacture the food products, that is, ice cream, bread, breakfast, cereals, etc. And transport and sell the food products to consumers, that is, restaurants, supermarkets, etc. Farmers found it to be increasingly profitable to concentrate on production and began to purchase inputs they formerly made themselves. This trend enabled others to build business that focused on meeting the need for inputs used in production, agriculture such as seed, fencing and machinery and so on. These farms evolved into the industries that make up the agricultural inputs sector. Input farms are major part of agribusiness and produce variety of technologically based products that account for approximately 75% of all the inputs used in production agriculture. The farm of most commodities, wheat, rice, milk, livestock and so on, must be converted into a farm that can make them more useful and convenient for consumers. Now, for example, consumers would rather buy flour than grind the wheat themselves before baking a cake. They are willing to pay extra for the convenience of buying the processed commodity, that is the flour, instead of the raw agricultural commodity, that is wheat as it. During the same period, technological advances were being made in food preservation method. Up until this time, the perishable nature of most agriculture commodities meant that they were available only at harvest. Advance in food processing have made it possible to get those commodities all throughout the year. Today, even most farm families use purchased food and their fiber products rather than doing the processing themselves. The farms that meet the consumer's demand for greater processing and convenience also constitute a major part of agribusiness and are referred to as the processing manufacturing sector. Now, history of agribusiness, how it started as. Indian agriculture began by 9000 BC as a result of early cultivation of plants and domestication of crops and animals. Human settlement soon followed with implements and techniques being developed for agriculture. Indian agricultural products are traded around the world via trading networks and foreign crops were introduced to India. The 5-year plans gave importance to the agriculture sector, rural development and rural people's employment. Land and water management systems were developed with an aim of providing uniform growth. Our agriculture sector had undergone a green revolution during 1970s, after which white revolution related to milk production was carried out. Infrastructure is also a significant factor in the process of development. But a country like India does not possess enough infrastructure such as roads, electricity, fertilizers and pesticides availability. This is causing vulnerable damage to the growth of agriculture. While India has a wide network of rural finance institutions, many of the poor remain excluded. Due to the inefficiencies in the formal finance institutions, the weak regulatory framework, high transaction cost, and risk associated with lending to agriculture. Farmers' access to market is hampered by poor roads, rudimentary market infrastructure, and middlemen intervention in selling the products is very big problem in marketing the products. Hence, the Indian farmers need easily accessible and highly structured markets without middleman's intervention. Now we go to India's agribusiness challenge. India is one of the very few countries in the world endowed with rich and diverse agroclimatic zones, vast land resources for cultivation, about 160 million hectares are there, huge chunk of human resources in agriculture, that is nearly two-thirds of the population, and wide variety of crops grown and strong research and development facilities. Indian agriculture has performed at the most satisfactory and has comparative advantage in much farm production, but does not enjoy competitive advantage. However, its share in world trade is insignificant, though it has 20% of world's irrigable land under food grains, is the second largest grower of vegetables, and produces nearly 17% of world's cotton. Many paradoxes still exist. For instance, in spite of good surplus of food grains, there are millions of people dying of hunger. Many farmers are poor and in debt, and in spite of having reasonable marketable surplus also, despite good research and development facilities also, farmers still practice subsistence agriculture. One of the underlying reasons for such paradoxes is the existence of a large number of small farmers. Through successive family generations and the resulting fragmentation of land, small farmers in India are poor, undernourished, poverty stricken, depend on monsoons, and practice subsistence agriculture. As their risk taking abilities are low, productivity declines. Poor market orientation and low value addition capacity gives them low margins, leading to low risk taking abilities. Thus, small farmers enter a vicious circle and find it difficult to break. A little bargaining power and heavy dependence on their farm produce for basic needs add to their woes, and they end up becoming victims to the exploitative market. Intermediaries who deny them a fair share of the consumer rupee, small farmers in India, in a bid to hedge their miseries, embraced diversification of agriculture. During the past 2 decades, there has been a perceptible increase of incomes from livestock, fisheries, and forestry. Food crops have been replaced by cash crops in many areas. However, the experience of agricultural development in India has shown that benefits will not accrue to the small farmers unless they are integrated into the markets as recognizable players through innovative institutional arrangements. Institutions, especially cooperative and corporate, have attempted to integrate small farmers into the market by removing bottlenecks in marketing of agricultural produce and regulating the market in favor of small farmers. A few institutional arrangements have been claimed to have reduced the transaction cost by steadily transforming from manpower driven to technology driven, from disintegrated supply chains to integrated supply chains, from finance as a source of control to information as a source of control. Two institutional arrangements, namely Anand, pattern of cooperatives, and eShopal, have received wide attention for the benefits they claim to have passed on to the small farmers. There have been various studies conducted to evaluate and verify such claims, but most of the studies evaluated these two institutions exclusively. Hardly any study has been conducted comparing and contrasting both. In this chapter, we attempt to do the job. The purpose of comparison is to bring out the salient features embedded into the arrangements that benefit small farmers and look for the institutional management that offers better services to the small farmers. The outcome of the analysis would be helpful for policymakers to make appropriate initiatives. Scope for agribusiness in India. The scope and opportunities in the agribusiness have substantially expanded due to globalization of trade and agriculture. Agriculture is a major component of the Indian economy. More than 75% of our people have their livelihood as agriculture and agriculture oriented works. Mahatma Gandhi said, Indian economy lives in rural villages and many of the industries getting their raw material from agriculture sector. Agribusiness is based on some prominent scope of agribusiness in India. Or India is endowed with varied agroclimatic conditions which facilitates production of temperate, subtropical and tropical agricultural commodities. There is a growing demand for agriculture inputs like feed and fodder, inorganic fertilizers, biofertilizers. Biotechnology applications in agriculture have vast scope in production of seed, biocontrol agents, industrial harnessing of microbes for bakery products. Export can be harnessed as a source of economic growth. As a signatory of World Trade Organization, India has vast potential to improve its present position in the world trade of agricultural commodities, both raw and processed form. The products line include cereals, pulses, oilseeds and oils, oil meal, spices and condiments, fruits and vegetables, flowers, medicinal plants and essential oils, agricultural advisory services, agricultural tools and implements, meat, milk and milk products, fish and fish products, ornamental fish, forest by products, etc. At present, processing is done at primary level only and the rising standard of living expands. Opportunities for secondary and tertiary processing of agricultural commodities. The vast coastal line and internal water courses provides enormous opportunity for production of marine and inland fish and ornamental fish culture, gaining popularity with the increase in aesthetic value among the citizens of India. The livestock wealth gives enormous scope for production of meat, milk and milk products, poultry products, etc. The forest resources can be utilized for production of byproducts of forestry. Beekeeping and apiary can be taken up on large scale in India. Mushroom production for domestic consumption and export can be enhanced with improvement in the state of art of their production. Organic farming has the highest potential in India as the pesticide and inorganic fertilizer application are less in India compared to industrial nations of the world. The farmers can be encouraged and educated to switch over for organic farming. There is a wide scope for production and promotion of biopesticides and biocontrol agents for protection of crops. Seeds, hybrid and genetically modified crops have the highest potential in India in the future since the productivity of high yielding varieties has reached a plateau. Micro irrigation systems and labor saving farm equipments have good potential for the years to come due to declining groundwater level and labor scarcity for agricultural operations like weeding, transplanting and harvesting. Production of vegetables and flowers under greenhouse conditions can be taken up to harness the export market. Trained human resources in agriculture and allied sciences will take on agricultural extension system due to dwindling resources of state finance and downsizing the present government agricultural extension staff as consulting services. Enhanced agriculture production throws open opportunities for employment in marketing, transport, cold storage and warehousing facilities, credit, insurance and logistics support services. Impact of globalization. The policies of globalization have taken Indian agriculture into the global village, opening up various opportunities as well as numerous challenges. The current structural changes in the economy have resulted in major shifts in the nation agriculture scenario. The world eyes with the awe and optimism the fast growing Indian rural market, which has become indispensable for making corporate growth strategy in the country. Research reports point out that the total rural market in India is larger than its urban counterpart. Agribusiness has opened up vast opportunities for value addition, packaging, retailing, and exports of agricultural products with high application of technology and management. Major part of Indian population is dependent on agriculture and the sector also supplies raw material for various industries. The progressive growth of Indian economy is most likely to be controlled by the agribusiness sector. But one fourth of our fruits and vegetables are getting spoiled before reaching to the consumer, largely because of the absence of adequate infrastructure. Last few years, there have witnessed a radical shift in the nature of agribusiness. And as a result, the demand for competent and dynamic professionals has grown manifold. The current structural changes in the economy have resulted in major shifts in the Indian agricultural scenario. The scope and opportunity in agribusiness has been increased due to policy reforms at local level under the directives of World Trade Organization regime. Agribusiness has opened up vast opportunities in the industries like packaging, supply of raw materials, processed agri-foods, production, export of agricultural products and other allied fields with the use of high-level technology. To succeed in Indian agribusiness must empower the farmer by making agriculture profitable, not by expropriating him, says Mr. Patnaik. In conclusion, in this session, we discussed about the characteristics, history and scope of agribusiness. We also discussed the challenges faced by agribusiness in India. Today, the business has become very competitive and complex. This is mainly due to changing taste and fashion of the consumers on the one hand and introduction of substitute and cheaper and better competitive goods on the other side. The old dictum produce and sell has changed over time into produce only what customers want. In fact, knowing what customers want is never simple. Nevertheless, a farmer or a operator or farmer manager has to give proper thought to this consideration in order to make his business a successful one. After going through this session, it is apparent that the definition of agriculture had to be expanded to include more than production. Farmers rely on the input industries to provide the products and service they need to produce agricultural commodities. They also rely on commodity processors, food manufacturers, and ultimately food distributors and retailers to purchase their raw agricultural commodities and to process and deliver them to the consumer for final sale. The result is the food and the fiber system. In addition, scope of agriculture will also enable us to analyze the attributes and features of agribusiness and also their contribution to agriculture. By tracing the history of agribusiness will help to learn about ancient methods and apply some techniques in modern life. Thank you very much for being with me.